The origin point of objects in Blender is one of those things that seems really small, because it literally is, but can completely mess up your workflow if you ignore it. Whether you're modeling or animating or using modifiers, a misplaced origin can cause unexpected issues to happen, like objects rotating weirdly, scaling incorrectly, or snapping to the wrong spot. So in this video, I'll show you why the origin point matters, how to control it, and most importantly, how to avoid common mistakes that can ruin your workflow. So let's hop into Blender and let me explain. So here I have the default cube in Blender, and that tiny little orange dot in the middle, that's the origin point of the cube. The origin is basically the reference point for transformations like moving, rotating, and scaling in Blender. And whenever you're manipulating an object, Blender uses this point as the anchor. So I'm going to switch to the move tool so you can see the axis of the origin point, and also switch the transform orientation to local. And now when I rotate the cube, you can see that the axis of the origin point also rotates with it. And that's exactly what we want, because now I can grab the cube and actually move it along its local axis. Now let's hit tab enter edit mode, and now when I rotate the cube and hit tab back into object mode, you can see that the local axis of the origin are the same as the global axis, and now I cannot move the cube along its local axis. Again, if I move the cube while being in the object mode, you can see that the origin point moves with it. But if I grab the cube while being in the edit mode, you can see that the origin point stays where it was. Hitting tab back into object mode, you can see that now if I rotate the cube, it rotates along its origin. Maybe this is actually what you want, but if that's not the case, this is how you mess up the origin point. And if you happen to mess it up, you can go to this options menu, hit origins, and now you can manipulate the origin point however you like it, maybe bring it back where it used to be, but this is not a very precise method. So I'm going to hit Ctrl Z and bring back the origin point to the center of the world and turn off the origins from the options menu. And the right way of doing this is while the object is selected, you can go to Object, Set Origin, and choose Origin to Geometry, and the origin will just jump back to where it belongs. Now, it's a little bit of a different story if you're scaling the object. Now, if I scale the cube while being in the object mode, you can see that the data of scaling is right here. I've scaled down the object by 0.444. But when I hit tab enter edit mode and we can turn on the edge length from this menu, you can see that it still says 2 meters by 2 meters, which is not correct. And to fix this, we can hit tab back into object mode, hit Ctrl A and scale. And now if we hit tab back into edit mode, you can see that the edge length is now correct. Not applying the scale can cause some issues with beveling, physics simulations, or maybe adding modifiers. So just don't forget to apply the scale if you're scaling while being in the object mode. But this is actually not what I like to do. Let me hit Ctrl Z and scale this back to how it used to be. What I'd like to do is actually scaling the objects while being in the edit mode. Now, as you can see, the dimensions of our cube is correct without applying the scale. Of course, the downside of this method is that while being in the object properties menu, you can see that the scale says 1:1, which is not correct. But I personally don't really care about this because I think just applying the scale is an extra step and I don't want to take an extra step. So I just prefer scaling while being in the edit mode. Now let's talk about the connection between the origin point and modifiers. The best example for this scenario is of course the mirror modifier. So if I just add a mirror modifier to this cube, you can see that nothing happens. We're basically getting two cubes at the exact same place. Now to fix this, I'm going to hit tab into edit mode, hit GX and move my object along the x-axis while being in the edit mode, and now you can see the effect of the mirror modifier. And the anchor for the mirror modifier is actually the origin of the object. Another good example for this is of course the array modifier. You see, if the origin is not in the correct place, the objects won't duplicate correctly. Also, with the simple deform modifier, the origin controls where the bending and the twisting happens. So to recap, it's just better not to mess the origin point to begin with. But if you did for some reason, do correct it. You better always grab and rotate the objects while being in the object mode. And if you're scaling the object, I suggest scaling in the edit mode. And if you scale the object while being in the object mode, just don't forget to apply the scale. So that's it for today. Hope you learned something, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And thanks for watching. See you in the next video.